Chris, thank you so much for having me
Welcome.
here. I love the facility. It's great to finally get up here in person and see
Yeah, we're
it.
very happy to have you.
Yeah, this is great. I wanted to just take the opportunity to just ask, what were your main reasons for starting your journey to net zero? I
Yeah,
know we've been working with you guys for a while now,
yeah.
but what was the real driving force
What
to
prompted
make
it?
that happen? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to ignore the sort of moral reasons behind it. Anyone who's had their head buried in the sand uh, will probably have been the only people to miss the importance of working towards environmental performance and environmental improvements. But for us, we've been in aligned spaces for a long time. We obviously recruit into some niche areas, one of which is health, safety, environmental.
Right.
Probably for the last 20 years, that's been more on the health and safety side, but we've been close to those environmental and sustainability professionals and seen the rise in importance of the work that they do. So for us, it would be remiss of us to work with companies to improve their own environmental and sustainability performance without looking inward and looking at our own. So we obviously look for partners who can support us in that. We do commit to try and educate ourselves on those topics. So we've got a team dedicated to environmental sustainability who are going through qualifications in the space, which helps us support our clients because it is one of those topics that people, I'd like to say, have varying amounts of knowledge about.
Yeah.
I'd say lots of people have got very, very small amounts of knowledge and just think about what they can personally do at home from an environmental perspective. But from a business perspective, it's hard to ignore the commercial benefits as well as the sort of moral obligation to do it.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's been really impressive to see how proactive you guys have been at actually embracing this and really using it for what it should be used for.
Yeah.
Just so that people are aware of who haven't perhaps done this yet, how have you found the process getting onto the NCZ platform and sort of going through it?
Yeah, I mean, I hope we were a good partner for this project because you spoke to all the things that matter to us. So one of the things that we think differentiate ourselves from our recruitment competitors is our focus on data and how that links into the way that we deliver on our recruitment campaigns. And that's, to go back to my earlier point, I think that's the problem with people's approach to this is that there's nowhere to start. And we work with companies who are hiring their first sustainability professional and they don't know what they're looking for. They don't know what good looks like. And I think from an environmental perspective, even when you're out down on something as part of the big sustainability arena, just environmental, then again, it's the same question. It's like, where do we focus our attention? So we've always been data focused and really get into the granular detail. And I think that's where we sort of see eye to eye. It's removing that sort of, whatever happens to be the hot topic at the time and really getting into the detail. And that's where, you've pushed us in terms of looking at, right through our supply chain and looking at where, we may have focused in parts on energy management in the past or waste management, but to get us to look at it holistically and have a real focus on it was challenging, but we needed someone like you, I think, to make us focus on the data that sits behind that and actually evidence that data, not just make it based on evidential sort of suggestions.
And have you found that that's benefited the business? Has it changed anything in terms of how you operate?
Yeah, well, like any data, there's lots of it around. It's what you do with it, right? So again, you've helped us unpick that information into some meaningful sort of actions. There was some stuff we were doing already. I mean, you mentioned the building we're in. I think the timing of the work you did with us couldn't have been better because we're already planning to move to a new office. So when we moved in here, we spent a fair bit on the fit out. And for that money, we ensured that the company partnered with us, Rhino Interiors, were focused on energy management as one part of the remit. Things like our parent company and their fleet cars now, we don't have any diesel petrol only cars. We have hybrid cars or electric only cars. The waste management part of it, we were probably using reasons not to move to a better waste management. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're not a huge a use of when you look at our CO2 kind of footprint, we're not huge in an office environment, but there were still things that we probably thought we were doing better than we were until you presented the data and went, okay, well, there's some simple fixes there and some simple work we can do. So yeah, we definitely took actions immediately off the back of what you gave us. I think the biggest challenge, which I think would take us from a silver up towards a gold and a platinum, is is the supply chain and looking deeper into that supply chain.
Yeah, and that next step, if you like, is where a lot of organisations will, once they've seen the benefit of actually baselining their footprint, understanding where those emissions are coming from, and then where the opportunities or stroke problems lie, and how best to tackle that. So, what would you say is sort of now your main focus moving forward?
Well, twofold. One, it's still the work we can do internally. I mentioned our client relationships earlier, and we're learning, you know, you're part of that ecosystem, you like it, in terms of what we're learning about environmental management and net zero standards. It's part of our bigger picture around sustainability, and the fact that we offer that as a recruitment expertise to our clients means that we've got to be on the front foot and that sort of thing. So you've prompted us to, probably with a view of moving up towards gold and platinum, we've signed up to the Supply Chain Sustainability School to look at some of the courses they offer in terms of upskilling our staff. And there are some really great resources out there to help educate people. Like I say, it's a topic that a lot of people don't know a lot about. So I think we've taken some steps there to educate ourselves. I think, we are at the mercy of our parent company in terms of what we can do, but to flip that on its head, I think we've been a positive influence at group level. We're part of the Per Temps Network Group, for those that don't know. So it's a $1 billion turnover recruitment business, big office footprint, but obviously a big client network as well. So what we do as a sort of small business in ENG can then be multiplied up by the influence we can have across the Per Temps Network Group. I'd say with our clients, I mentioned the commercial aspect earlier, which I don't want to make it all about the commercial viability, but the reality is that we are an SME. If you look at ENG, we're at the mercy of what our clients want, but also what their clients want. And ultimately, you go right at the food chain, and it's what the investors want or what the government want. And what the government want is investment. So, we've got clients in the financial services space, and we know how much ESG and sustainable investment is a huge part of where their focus is at the moment. And that money just permeates down through the food chain. So my comment would be, regardless of which sector you're in, and we're in financial services, I mentioned facilities management and property and construction and manufacturing and logistics. You go high enough up the food chain, they care about this stuff. So if you can be on the front foot, then it makes you a more commercially viable option going forward as well.
Essentially what we're seeing as driving the industry more. That whole, large organization is probably under some form of legislative requirement. And therefore, if you want to supply that company, you also have to do your bit to become an approved supplier. And that's what generally tends to make change happen faster than legislation. So you're
it's
right.
a sad fact, isn't it? When people's pockets are affected, they tend to enact change a little bit faster. And we've seen that. But I think there's been opportunities. Some of them have been better taken than others. But look at the big construction projects that have happened across HS2, regardless of whether you think it's money well spent or not. But they certainly put some standards in there in terms of if you want to support and work at any level of supply chain into HS2, then you've got to meet certain commitments, not necessarily standards, but commitments around your environmental standards, as well as things like ED&I and health and safety, which is obviously a space we work in. So it's good to see that forcing change in those who don't necessarily want to.
And it is happening, and it's only going to become more so. So organisations that can actually integrate it so that it becomes part of how they operate will much more easily be able to adopt any of these requirements that they're being asked to adopt. And ultimately, if their business is going to benefit from that from a commercial perspective, but also an environmental and social perspective at the same time, then we're making positive steps.
Well, a chap I know who's far more knowledgeable about the subject than I am, who's moved to Australia recently, but he's the director of sustainability for a big business. Said to me, he was previously in sustainable procurement. He said, sustainable procurement is just good procurement. It's just good supply chain management. Is that if you're not looking at the sustainability and the environmental standards of your supply chain, then that's just poor procurement practices. That's not sustainable procurement here and procurement over here. So we've tried to utilize that internally here. And we don't have a huge supply chain being a recruitment business, but we can obviously, if we can do our little bit, then it all tots up, doesn't it, across the economy.
I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
For having me here, and
you let me off easy.
No, absolutely. I'm looking forward to my next trip up here. So great to see you, and thanks again.
Cheers, Alan. Thanks.
Cheers, Chris.